Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Today, we're talking about a new year and new goals, helping students to plan, persist, and achieve success in 2022. I'm your host, Ann Dolin from Educational Connections. And for the last 23 years, my tutors and I and our executive function coaches have been helping students to improve their performance in school, specifically their study habits, and to help hopefully their parents reduce stress along their educational journey. We're going to be talking about a number of things this afternoon. We're going to discuss how to help students achieve their goals. And I'm going to show you techniques that we use when we work with kids. I'm going to show you how to use these techniques for your kids at home, an easier version for parents. And then lastly, we'll discuss what to do if your child just isn't buying into this, if your child doesn't seem interested so much in setting goals. Well, luckily, I have an expert with me in the house today. I have Brianna Brown. She's an executive function coach with us and also a tutor. And she's a former public school teacher. She taught grades 6 through 12 English, and she was also a school counselor. So welcome, Brianna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so let's kick us off and talk a little bit about why goal setting is so important in the first place. What are the benefits?
So students really succeed, and goal setting is that opportunity to improve. So when you set a goal, it's going to give that student a challenge, improve their performance in many different areas, but then also give them that confidence and motivation to continue moving forward, because with every goal they achieve, they get more and more confident that they can achieve more.
I love that. And I found that to be true as well. Even setting small goals and seeing a student achieve those is such a motivating factor. So Brianna, tell us about the types of goals.
Yes, so there are 3 different types of goals that I use with my students. You have a short-term goal, which is that instant gratification, something that they can feel immediate success with. And that's going to be, a short-term goal of today, tomorrow, maybe even push it as far as a month away. But then you get into the medium range goal. And this can be between a month and a year, but I really don't like to push it further than the school year so we can make sure that we stay on track. And so then you have your long-term goals, which are a few years out to when you're much older. So what I like to do is work with students on figuring out what their big long-term goal is and then working backward. So for example, I had a student who was really interested in attending UVA. And we said, that's an awesome decision. Okay, so let's take a look together at what requirements it's going to take to get into that college. And we said, here's the GPA, here's your GPA. Awesome. Now, is that sufficient enough to get where you want to go? She said, well, I'm really going to need to improve my math grade. And I said, that's an awesome thing to focus on. So let's make your goal that you want to improve your grade in math. But then we need to work down a little bit further and say, okay, well, what will that take to get there? And she said, I haven't really done my homework every day, and I'm not really great at studying. And I said, that's awesome. We'll work on study skills, and we'll also establish that you'll do homework every day. So once we establish that big long-term goal, she figured out the steps that she would need to get to that short-term goal of every day I'll need to do homework. I'll need to set aside time to study and also get help from my teacher when needed.
That's a great example. Thank you so much for sharing that, Brianna. So let's talk a little bit about how we help kids set goals, especially when we're first working with a student, even if the student is a little bit reluctant. Have you ever had kids like that their mom signs them up for a coach?
Most definitely.
And they may not be into it. Let's talk about some specific techniques. So can we role play for this one, and I'll be the student and you'll be you?
Definitely. So what I do is I help students achieve goals by helping them through a thought process. And so I'd like to role play by playing the Wheel of Fortune. Have you ever seen that game show?
Actually, I have.
Awesome. So it's all about creating success. So how does it feel, Anne, when you set and achieve goals in your life?
Well, I haven't really set too many goals.
Well, you might have set them and just didn't realize it. And so I'm going to show you an example of how you can brainstorm different things that you might be interested in achieving. And you might realize that you probably have set goals in the past. So I'd like you to—
I think you're right, Brianna, actually, Because I set a goal for the number of likes on TikTok, and I was super excited when I had 1,000 likes.
That's a perfect example because students love to say when they go viral, right?
Yeah, it felt good.
So great example. So exactly. So when you set a goal and you achieve it, how does that make you feel? You get that good feeling, right?
It felt great. Yeah, it did.
So I'm going to teach you the wheel of success. So I want you to take out a sheet of paper.
Okay.
And on that paper, I want you to draw a big circle. So this is going to be the Wheel of Fortune, and it's all about creating success in your life, just like the game show. So you can be a winner by choosing those right steps and choosing the blanks to fill in. So I want you to draw a line right down the middle, just like this. And then I want you to draw a line across the middle, just like this. Okay. So I want you to think of different things that you really want to achieve by the end of the school year. And I say end of the school year because I know we'll be working together throughout the school year. And I want you to think about something really important to you and also within your power to achieve. So you might have a goal of going viral on TikTok again, but I want it to be within your power to achieve. So on your Wheel of Fortune, what is something you would like to improve on by the end of the school year?
Well, I really, I would like to score more goals on my soccer team. I want to get more playing time. And last year I scored 2 goals. And I honestly think that I can probably at least score 3 goals this year.
I love that. And that's a great goal to have because extracurricular activities look great on college applications. So on top of here, I want you to put soccer. And then how do you want to word that? Do you want to say, I'd like to score more goals, or would you like to say a specific number of goals?
Well, I'd say at least 3 goals.
That's great.
Or maybe, yeah, I think 3 is good.
So I would put, I will score 3 goals in a season.
Sure.
Perfect. So what I'd like you to do is take this same motivation after we get finished, and I want you to fill out some other ideas as well. So great job, Anne. That's awesome.
Thank you, Brianna.
So from this quick model, you can see that I'm brainstorming with my students to help them figure out what they're interested in. And that was a very quick example, but this is the whole pie completed. And what I do is I encourage students to think of what they're interested in personally, but then also bring in that academic component. And I had a student who was really kind of reluctant to get into tutoring, but once we got started, he was just super excited to keep going. And so we started his Wheel of Fortune by practicing bass guitar. And he was so excited because after he set that goal and started to improve, I said, oh, you feel how good that feels? Let's take that same energy and put it towards academics. So in creating an academic goal, I like to do a SMART goal. So a SMART goal you've probably heard of before, and your goals need to be SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So I use this with my students because it helps keep them accountable, and I like to check in with them on their goal to make sure that they are on track. So Anne, you might have said, you know, I'd really like to do well in math. And I say, that's awesome, Anne, but what can we do to get better at math? And we broke it down even further, and you said, okay, I need to improve my math skills by studying 20 minutes before soccer practice on Monday and Wednesday. Awesome job. But how can we make sure that you're actually doing that? Well, I'll need to set a timer for 20 minutes. So there's that. How can I tell I've met the goal? But with every goal, you have to have steps to achieve that. And that's where that achievable is. We say, okay, well, what are you going to do? Because you can say you're going to study, but if you sit down and you're not sure what to do, you won't know where to start. So you might have said, I'll make flashcards, I'll reread my notes, or maybe I'll complete that study guide my teacher gave me. And if they didn't, I'll create my own. So one of the most important parts is the relevancy. So sometimes some students have people telling them what they need to achieve, but I really want it to be that student-centered, what do I want to achieve? Because I want to make it relevant to them and important to them. So for a student like Anne, she wants to improve her math grade by her math midterm in March. So this is just a perfect way to help those students figure out the specifics of what they want to do.
Brianna, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as you can see here, I have my students write it down, because if they don't write it down, it goes in one ear and sometimes right out the other. So I have them create that at the top, and you can take that sentence, put it on a Post-it note, print this out and put it on your bathroom mirror or wherever you get ready in the morning, and help you have that constant reminder. So it says, by the March 18th midterm, I will study math for 20 minutes 2 times a week by doing the following. So one thing that's important that I love to do is understand that it's all about progress, not perfection. So you can see here, I will know I've attained my goal when I've consistently studied for 7 out of the 9 weeks. And sometimes some students feel like they have to be perfect, but it's okay, because when you set a goal, you have to have those abilities to allow some, not perfection, all about progress.
That's a great point. There are definitely slip-ups along the way when you're working with kids.
Yes.
And by the way, and thanks for that, Brianna, that was super helpful. Yes. We put together these handouts for you, and we'll send this to you tomorrow. But if you want it today, you could text the word goals to the number 33777. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. So Brianna shared with us how she works with students and techniques that she and our other coaches use when we set goals for kids. I found that setting goals is a great thing to do. It's a motivating thing to do. And it works really well at the start of something new, like the beginning of the year right now, or the beginning of the summer. How is the summer going to be filled? So let's start out by talking about goal setting right now for the start of this brand new year of 2020, and doing it as a family. Because when everybody's in on the act and it's fun and it's kind of like a game and a thoughtful discussion, it's a lot more entertaining than something academic that might feel punitive, which we don't want at all. We want this to be light and fun. All right, so I'm going to share with you a brainstorming activity, and it's going to involve specific things that you'll need. And ideally, you want to do this at a time you're already together as a family. Like, let's say that you have Sunday dinner together once a week. And you're already meeting regularly. You might say before dinner, hey, everybody, let's talk about goals for 2022. And it can just be goals that are from now until June. So you're going to need little stacks of Post-its, a pen for each person, a whiteboard if you have one, and if you don't, it's okay. You just need a blank wall, because everybody's going to get a chance and go to the wall or the whiteboard and put up their sticky notes. And then you're going to need some type of timer, like your phone. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to say to everybody, hey, how do you want to learn and grow this year in 2022? What do you want to do? And you might give some examples of that you want to do on your own. So for example, you might say, you know what, for me, I want to meal prep on Sunday nights and have 2 meals, fresh meals a day with all of you. Or you might say, I want to wake up at 5:30 and go to the gym twice a week, because those things are important to you. And when kids hear what somebody else wants to do, it kind of fires up those executive function skills in their head to think ahead a little bit about what would be important to them. But often they need a couple of examples to get started. If your kids look a little bit stuck, and they might be, especially if they're younger, if there's another adult in your house, a spouse, a significant other, ask them at that time, hey, what are your goals? And allow them to share out loud so kids can get a sense of it. Then you're going to set the timer for a short period of time. I typically use about 4 minutes, but you could use 2 or 3 if you wanted. And during this time, everybody is going to get together and they're going to brainstorm, and they're going to furiously write down their goals that they want to accomplish for the remainder of the year. And then one by one, each person gets up and walks up to the whiteboard or to your wall, and they put their sticky note down one at a time and talk about what's important to them. So this is an example of one that I did with actually my friends from college and their kids. And the boy especially was super reluctant. At first, he's like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. And once he saw all of us coming up with our suggestions, he actually had the best ideas of everyone. He wanted to plan out a family baseball trip, a Major League Baseball trip. Anyway, so each person gets up, and I will share with you that no idea is bad. You may, however, want to set the groundwork that any idea you write down shouldn't be involved with technology. It shouldn't be like, I want to get to the next level in Xbox. Maybe those things are off the table. But in my experience in doing this with lots of kids and family members, kids don't usually go in that direction. So during this time, everybody's going to write down their goals. And then one by one, each person will go up. And what you want to do is say things like, that's a great idea. I never thought of that. You're so creative. Oh, I see why you like that idea. Even if the idea feels outlandish to you, that's okay. There are no wrong answers. So we want to be, as parents, the coach, we don't want to criticize our kids. And then your board might look something like this. At this point, now you want to help your family narrow it down. Because in reality, even though we all have these ideas, chances are we're not going to get them all done. So you're going to ask, hey, this is great. What's your top goal? If you could just do one of these, what would it be? And then one by one, each person goes back up and they pick their one goal that they want to accomplish. They take that sticky note and they move it to the top part of their board, and they talk about why that is their top goal. So it's helping kids with the concept of prioritizing. So we're firing up executive function skills because we're helping kids to think ahead, which is generally difficult for kids. And we're also teaching them about prioritizing. And what I love about this activity is all it is a discussion. It's just a fun way to learn about your kids and to hear what their hopes and dreams are. I know in doing this with lots of students, I found out things about them that I never thought before. I have one student tell me that he wanted to build a computer. And in the back of my mind, I thought, that's outlandish. How can you ever do that? That is like virtually impossible. And he did it. He actually ordered a lot of the parts, and they were also already kind of like pre-built parts, and he put it together and he had a working computer. And it was just so impressive, and he was extremely proud. But it could be little things as well. It could be, that you as a parent want to run a 5K, or a student wants to finish a book. For older kids, it's often they want to finish their college applications by a certain date. So it's great for all ages. These are students that I did this with, and the little girl here is 4 at the time. And she was really a little bit too young to participate, but she thought it was the greatest thing ever. And her goal was to smell more flowers, which I thought was adorable. All right, so let's talk about what to do if you have a child who doesn't want to participate. First of all, you want to keep it fun. You don't want to put pressure on your kids in that these are all academic goals. Really, they can be anything. We want this just to be a lighthearted discussion, thinking ahead about the future. So none of these things have to be correlated to grades or academics, and that's perfectly fine. How do you make sure that your child follows through on things that they've decided they want to do? Well, one way you can do it is to have an established time that your whole family meets every week. And it could be that Sunday night dinner, or it might be that you get together always after soccer practice on Tuesday nights because everybody happens to be home at that same time. It's honestly hard to get everybody together at one time, but pick that one time a week. And then you might want to say things like, how are you doing? How did your week go with your goal? Or how are you coming along? And even if your child says, oh, I haven't done much about that, then you say something like, oh, tell me about that. So as parents, we don't want to say, you really need to get on that, or you said you were going to do it, what happened? Instead, we just want to ask a couple of questions and really leave it alone. Maybe we just get kids to think about it again, and that's good enough. Here are some examples of things that we might be thinking as parents in the back of our minds. Well, you said you were going to walk the dog every day, but you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Instead, you could ask, oh, what got in your way? And I personally love this question. You know, anytime kids set goals, I often ask, tell me what could get in your way of getting it done. And that's a cue that helps kids to think ahead and to troubleshoot in advance what could go wrong, because inevitably something will go wrong. And if they can start to predict what could happen and think about it ahead of time, even if they're not super verbal with you, but they start to think about, oh, well, you know what? I don't know, on Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't get home till really late because I have football. If they say that, or if they hint, well, I have a lot to do with football, you could ask, is there somebody that could do it for you those nights? So by asking kids this question, it is allowing them to settle down on or sort through some of their obstacles before they start. You might say, if they haven't done it this week, looking ahead, how might you approach this next week? Last week is done. Whenever kids get a bad grade or something doesn't go their way, it doesn't work well with kids when you look backwards and say, why didn't you turn that in? Or why didn't you study more? That isn't typically successful with kids because they feel on the defense. But instead, if you take those looking back questions away and ask a looking forward question, kids are more responsive to those. So like looking ahead, how might you approach this week? Or what's the first step you might take? Which day do you want to start this? These are questions I found to be super helpful for kids because it allows them to sort through it on their own. Here are some more. As a parent, we often ask, how's school? What are your grades like? Instead, ask something like, what do you have coming up? Do you have any big projects or tests? Or what's something small you can do to get started? Again, boiling down how's school, which is super broad. It's kind of like telling kids to do their best, which is also super broad and never gets realized, and making it feel small. What's something little you can do to get started? Basically, anything with goal setting is going to involve a crucial conversation. Conversations are the most important things that we can, when we think about the relationship with our kids, it's the most important aspect of parenting, is keeping the dialogue open, asking questions, and having conversations with our kids. If you'd like more information on how to do it, I can recommend a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. And there's also one just for teenagers. And these are the best books, I personally think, on the market for improving relationships between kids and parents. It allows us to understand how we need to dial it back and be better listeners and ask questions instead of telling kids what to do. We use these techniques with kids in our coaching and our tutoring sessions as well. So before we wrap up in just a few minutes, I wanted to remind you that we're going to go to a chat. And at this point, you're going to be able to put in your questions and I'll answer them in just a moment. So please go to the chat now. If you have a question, I'll answer it. And then also at the end, you'll see a survey, and the survey is going to ask you questions about today's presentation. And please take a look at that as well. And if you would be so kind to respond, that would be fabulous. So it's going to ask you, what is your takeaway? All right, so Brianna, are you ready? I think we have some questions in the queue. Let me go to those right now. By the way, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me by email at ann@uctutoring. And again, if you wanted those worksheets, we'll send them to you tomorrow in a follow-up email. This has been recorded, but you can text 33777 in the word goals and you'll get those today. All right, so let's take a look at the questions. One person said, my goal is to get more organized. I love that goal. That's a great goal for kids and for parents. So I love all the goals that everybody put in. That's terrific. All right, let's see. how do I get kids to self-monitor their own learning and to set a goal that doesn't require their parents to remind them of all their assignments? So I would try, if you're a parent and you feel like you've taken the role of homework police and you've had to remind your kids over and over again about incomplete work, I would take a step back and have a conversation with your child about it and just say what you're observing and say, I've noticed, by the way, I love the words I've noticed. I think they're really powerful and bringing up an issue. So it's not like you always require a reminder. It's, I've noticed that I've reminded you a lot about your assignments. I don't want to do that anymore. What's a better way for you to stay on top of things without me reminding you? Because I don't want to have that role anymore either. And have a dialogue about it. My recommendation would be on that Sunday session together, take a moment to ask all your kids, not just, the student that's struggling, but even your overachiever, and say, let's look at the week ahead. What do you have going on this week? Do you have anything big coming up? And this is a time that they can go to Canvas or Schoology or whatever their platform is and preview their week ahead. That's super helpful to kids. Kids with ADHD and executive function issues will not do that naturally. They just show up on Monday like, I'm here, without thinking about the week. And already on Monday, they're caught behind. So if they can do some prior planning to think ahead about what they have to do, that can really allow you to take a step back, because now they know what is going on that week. And you might have a check-in with them just one day a week, maybe on Wednesdays. Hey, instead of me reminding you every day, would Wednesday work well? Maybe after dinner, we can check in about how you're doing. And that's it. And don't give any reminders at any other time. These are kids' grades. It's okay if they stumble a little bit, we'll catch them if they fall. But our relationship with our kids, honestly, is more important than any grade. Let's see. Would including my 2-year-old in the meeting and setting a goal not be helpful? Oh, I think a 2-year-old could totally come to the meeting. They probably can't contribute much. But one of the values of this exercise is not that you're going to set perfect goals. And it's not that, we're expecting our kids to set smart goals all the time. That's not it. It's honestly having a positive relationship with our kids over discussion and allowing them to see that goal setting is just part of my life. It's what everybody does. So when they go on to college or they're in the work world, they have a sense of what goal setting is. It helps them for the future too. So by all means, bring your 2-year-old into it. Okay, are planners the best place to put goals, and how do planners relate to medium-term and long-term goals? So you wouldn't be putting a long-term goal into a planner. A planner, like an assignment notebook, is a great place for short-term goals. So that might be one of the things we do is a technique called calendaring. And we'll sit down with the student. I like to do this at the beginning of the week, like Sunday, Monday or so, and say, let's look at your week ahead. What do you have come and do? So we do this with kids from an academic point of view. And then let's say they have a math test on Friday. We'll say, how might you study for that test? How might you break that down? And then they'll tell us, and they'll put those small things into their calendar. So I would only be putting short-term things into a calendar or an assignment notebook, not medium or long-term things. And by the way, if you have a child who, or if you've been setting long-term goals with kids, I might think about that differently and think more about short-term goals. It reminds me of a parent that came up to me at the end of a workshop I was doing at a school. This was a couple of years ago, and it was on motivation. And she said, I just don't get my kid. I thought I was onto something because she was a 5th grader. She's been wanting to go to Disney World forever. And I told her that if you get straight A's, that we'll do a whole family trip to Disney World. And I thought, and mom said, and I thought that wouldn't be that hard because that's only 9 weeks away. It was the beginning of the quarter. And she said, and it was great. Like the little girl was super excited about it. In the first few days, they were fabulous. She was cracking the book, doing her work, super motivated. And then after a couple of days, not so much. And then by the end of the week, she was back to old habits. And it's likely that goal is way too long-term. It's too far away. Getting good grades is not boiled down into a short-term goal. And that's why it didn't work. So as parents, we really want to resist the urge to just focus on long-term goals. They typically don't work for people. Long-term goals give kids a mission and a purpose, but don't necessarily give the minutia of what to do. Can you provide tips for the student who procrastinates all the time and doesn't care about the consequences? So there's two types of procrastinators. There's functional and dysfunctional. Functional procrastinators are the kids that it doesn't bother them one bit. They'll wait until the last minute to do something. And just by sheer adrenaline rush, I guess, and having their back against the wall, like, oh my gosh, I have to get this done. They will bump it out, get the work done, and turn it in on time. It may not be great, and they might feel stressed out, and you're really mad as the parent, but they get it done, and nobody outside your house knows. The teachers don't know about it. The teacher doesn't know. The other kids don't know. They've turned it in, and they've gotten a decent grade. So that's a functional procrastinator. A dysfunctional procrastinator is somebody that waits until the last minute and they just can't focus enough because they just don't have the skills to get that work done on time. And so not only does that stress the student out and stress you out, but now other people know. The teacher now knows, and it's affected your child's grade. The problem is sometimes functional procrastinators, they don't have a pain point. They don't see anything wrong with it because they've gotten away with it for so long. Dysfunctional procrastinators, because they feel that pain point, they generally want to change their ways. So I think that's why when you put consequences on a functional procrastinator, it doesn't always work. So instead, I might say something like, I can tell that this stresses you out if that's the case, or it feels stressful to me when you wait until the last minute and then you ask me to take you to Michael's to finish that project that you have to do. And by the way, if you're outside of the Washington area, Michael's is a craft store. And so when that happens and it affects you, there's a little bit more that you can say about it. And you might say, what would be a better way of getting started earlier? So I'd focus less on the end time and focus more on the concept of just starting earlier than finishing earlier, just starting earlier. And that can help too. Like, is this something that you could start before dinner? When you talk about the week ahead, when might you start on this? Could you get started just on Monday? What's the first step? That type of thing. All right. So one mom says, my son is really hard on himself. He's self-critical. He's anxious. How can I support his desire to have goals when I think he really just needs to live in the moment and enjoy being a kid? If you have a kid that's anxious about goal setting, I might not bring it up so much, and I might just support them in their desires, but not buy into it and set smaller goals to achieve that goal. So you might say, oh, that's interesting. I like that. I'm interested to know how you thought about that. Tell me more about it, and let them talk to you. So if they have super lofty goals for themselves, like straight A's, you might say, tell me about that. Tell me about why that's important to you. How would it feel if you got a B in this subject? And often talking about how they would feel if things don't go their way, and maybe it's not so bad, allows them to put their guard down a little bit. So it doesn't feel so harsh when it doesn't go their way, because it may not eventually. So I may not set smaller goals with the student. I may just try to be a sounding board and a listener. If you find that your child has major perfectionist qualities and it's getting in the way of life, I would recommend finding a therapist or a counselor who specifically deals in that area. And I'm happy to give you a referral. It's not something we do, but I can give you a referral for that because that's highly treatable. And it tends not to get better as kids get older. So I might think about finding somebody who can help with that early on. All right. I need to know when deadlines are to goal set. The student won't let me, my child won't let me know when projects and tests are due. So I might say, can you show me what you have coming up? Like, even if your child says, I don't have anything to do, I've got nothing coming up, you might say, oh, that's great, awesome, will you show me? And then go into Schoology or Canvas or whatever platform, Blackboard, and ask your child to show you, and click on each subject and have them show you what they have coming up. Because typically, I shouldn't say typically, always there is something coming up, but either they don't want to tell you about it because they haven't remembered to do it, or they've honestly forgotten about it. So, instead of just trusting them, I would trust but verify for those students. And somebody said, I'd like a referral to help a child with perfectionism or anxiety. And yes, feel free to email me. My email is Ann, A-N-N, at ectutoring.com, and I can give you referrals based on where you live. Can you share some of your thoughts on consequences? I tend to go from 1 to 10 fairly quickly, which isn't ideal. And yes, it's easy to do when we're really stressed out with our kids. So in general, we know that a carrot works better than a stick. And there's lots of research that shows that, noticing things that are good for kids, that are things good, is better than, negatives like taking things away or a punishment. In fact, one of the things that I found to be so helpful, and instead of thinking that way of punishments or consequences, is to think of it in a different way of what's already good that my child does. And there's a challenge that I might present to you, and it's called the 30-day challenge. And it's not, some diet or anything crazy like that. But all it is for the next 30 days, you notice something positive that your child has done every single day. So you might say, oh, I love how you came down to breakfast right on time this morning. That's awesome. Or, oh, that's so great, you helped your sister with her homework. I love seeing that. Thanks for doing that. So on a daily basis, noticing the good things, that's really powerful for kids. But when it comes to consequences, I think using when then might be better than a consequence, because you're giving them something instead. When you finish your math homework, then you can have the Xbox. Instead of if you finish your math homework, then you can have Xbox. The expectation is you will do it and then you can have it. So when then, those are short-term things, and there's something positive that follows instead of taking something away. Let's see. My 7th grader gets all A's, but plays games and is on Discord a lot. His argument is that as long as I get A's, why can't I play games? What do you do about it when you want him to spend less time gaming? I would have a conversation with him about it and say, I've noticed you're on games a lot. Tell me about that, and just open the dialogue about it. And say, I'm worried that when you're on games, you're not outside playing or you're not doing other things. Could we come up with a happy medium? And see if your child will naturally dial it back a little bit, and you can come to some resolution, like games will be turned off by 8 o'clock at night. Anything like that where the child has had a part in it is much more powerful than saying, you know what, I've had it. I'm throwing that Xbox out the window. Or, you know what, no gaming during the week, only on weekends. Which, by the way, some parents do with younger kids and it works well, but it's really hard to do with an older student. So having that discussion is often the way to go. And I'm speaking about what I consider overscheduled, highly scheduled students who do not get home until 6. Oh, tips for helping kids to dial back on activities. I have found that in our area of Washington, kids are really overscheduled, and that is typical. So I would look at it one of two ways. Is the student overscheduled because the student wants to be in all these activities, or is it from a parent's perspective that you want them to be in a lot of activities? And so I would kind of think about it both ways and have a discussion is this too much? Is there something that could go next season or next semester? And if your child wants to keep all of these activities, maybe coming to a common ground. Kids that seem overscheduled often go to bed also super, super late at night. You might have the discussion about finding weird windows of time to help kids get stuff done during the day. For example, they're waiting for the bus to go to their lacrosse meet. Could they get a little something done during that time? So if there's an overscheduled student, what often happens is they wait till they get home late at night to do all their work and it's too much and they stay up too late. I would ask them, do you have any weird windows of time which you can get some of these things done during the school day or before practice starts or on the bus ride to a game, that type of thing. My 4th grade son has no motivation at all. All he wants to do is have fun and enjoy the moment. How can I motivate him to set goals? Well, what I would do is do the family goal. Have everybody in your family together, as I mentioned, and see if he'll play along. I bet that he will. And even if he sets a goal that is not related to academics, it's perfectly fine. It's okay. Let that be. So sometimes kids aren't so motivated in school, but they're motivated in other aspects of their life. Like they love lacrosse and they're a great lacrosse player and they're super motivated in that area. If, however, you find that your child is unmotivated across the board and you're really concerned, I might seek out help from a counselor to kind of figure out, is there something else that's going on? Could there be a hint of depression? Is there anxiety that maybe is boiling underneath it all? And I might dig a little bit deeper. So when we see kids that, are really unmotivated, there's often something below the surface that's affecting them. All right, Melissa, any other questions that I can answer?
There is one question about a child who complains about not getting rewards when he gets good grades or reaches goals. So do you have any examples? Should you reward your kids for doing something that you think he's already expected to do?
That's a tough one because I know in this area, what I saw as a teacher, this was common practice, parents paying kids for grades. I don't think it's necessary. I think the majority of kids are motivated without, those things don't work really long term. They don't give kids internal motivation to pay for a goal, to pay for something, or to, buy them something. Certainly, if there's, a big goal and you want to do something special at the end, or they're working towards something and it's agreed upon, at the end of the semester, we're going to go camping together or something like that. It's less of a material thing, but more of something you do together. That might be an appropriate goal. But I personally never paid my kids for grades. I never gave them anything for doing chores. I just thought that was part of being in a family, and they started to, it just was natural for them to help out around the house because that was the expectation. So I might, to make it easier, say to them, you're right. Instead of not everybody gets paid, just agree. You're right. I bet there are a lot of people that get rewards or get paid for grades, but in our house, we know that you're going to get good grades regardless because you're that type of person. You care about your education. And I know you want to do a good job internally. And then maybe treat unexpectedly, like an ice cream or something like that, where it's not always associated with doing something.
There's another question that could be for Brianna. This would be good. So what calendaring tool, maybe a journal, do you recommend to help keep kids on track with their school assignments and their short-term action items?
So I actually had some great suggestions for that. So there's a couple methods that I use with my students that they really enjoy using. And one of them is called todoist. So it's todoist, and it's an online application where you can create different goals under different umbrellas. And so earlier, one of the parents mentioned having that big long-term goal, and you put that up there and say, okay, to get to this long-term goal, what steps do I need to achieve? And it actually allows you to create a to-do list. And you can do it every Monday. I plan to do this. Weekly, I plan to do this. You can literally break it down further. So I really love using that personally, and my students enjoy it as well, because they can create those goals in the to-do list app, and then it can give them little mini rewards as well. So that's a great planner that I use for a lot of my students. Another one that's super fun is if a student has Google Calendar, they can use their phone to create a goal, and it will literally set a goal for them, and then it will even time them. So if they say, I want to study 3 times a week, but they're not sure what days work best, the computer really figures it out for them. And then when they're ready to start studying, they press start, it times it for them, and then they get a little, celebratory thing at the end of the week that says they met that goal. So I really enjoy setting goals on the Google app on the phone, and then using Todoist. And I'll type it in the chat as well for the app. And it's a really great free resource for students to use for planners, as well as a calendar tool, because it even has an option for you to see, what do I need to do on Mondays? What do I need to do on Tuesdays, just to keep them accountable?
That's so cool. Thank you. Brianna, here's another question from a mom. She says, I have a teen who is super active in school and theater, but not so much in core academic classes. Procrastinates and misses assignments in core classes, and then he gets stressed out. His room is a disaster besides buying every organizer. And it causes him to misplace things. He's not good at all with time management. Any suggestions? Have you ever worked with kids like that?
I mean, that sounds like a lot of the students I currently work with. They have so many different things going on. And so what I like to do is start really small. Say, okay, let's focus on one thing. What is one of the things that you really want to improve on? Are you thinking that you're unorganized? Are you thinking that it's time management? What are those steps? And then I offer like little suggestions of, okay, if you're not really organized, let's start with your binders. Let's take a look at your school binders. Okay, let's get those organized and put together. How do you want to organize each one? And then I'll say, all right, well, how about your room? Is it something, I even had a student the other day. I said, your room's pretty messy. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Clean up as much as you can in 2 minutes. And he, raced to finish it. And he said, on the call? I said, yes, on the call. Let's do it. And so just kind of making it somewhat of a game, but somewhat fun, and giving them that confidence. So I always, I don't want to bombard a student with a whole lot of different things. I just say, hey, I'm so glad that you're interested in that. Let's try this one small example. And then I just give them that constant reassurance, because I do have a student that's consistently unmotivated and just doesn't have that, intrinsic motivation. And so I try to be that positive person to say, well, what do you do well? Okay, let's hone in on that. Why do you love that activity? Awesome. Let's take that same energy and put it towards something that we just want to get out of the way and get done with, and, help them stay motivated through that process.
I love that, Brianna. And I bet parent was super happy when you said, I'm giving you 2 minutes to clean your room.
Oh, yes.
That's awesome.
And sometimes it also makes me think of time blocking. I'll tell students, just do it for 10 minutes, just try it, because some people think that you have motivation first and then you go do an activity, but it's actually the other way around. And so sometimes I'll ask students, what do you think it takes to get started on a project? And they're like, I'm not sure. I'm like, just get started. So I'll say, just give it 10 minutes and then see what happens. And sometimes they'll realize, oh, well, now I'm already in it. I might as well finish it. So sometimes just giving them a time that they have to complete it is super helpful.
Brianna, have you ever had a student who this parent asks, who doesn't like the timer? They don't do well with the pressure of a timer. And what have you done to replace that?
So I have a couple students that feel like it's stressful. And so I'll say, well, maybe we'll just use a timer for a little while, see what the thought process was. Maybe we won't use a timer, but we'll say between this hour and this hour, you can see how long you work on something. So it's really trying to find what actually works, because time blocking doesn't work for everyone. But I say, it's not a test. It's not, if you get it done before that time, or, you don't want to be timed, as long as you're putting forth the effort. And so a lot of students have that anxiety behind tests because tests are timed. And so I just try to find something else that will work to encourage them. Maybe even saying, okay, well, how about, after our session, take a 10-minute break and then get started on something, and take the timer, but put it behind you. Don't even look at it, and just see what happens. Because what I've noticed is that their idea of time is not what they thought it would be. So a quick thing that I've done with the student is I said, all right, I want you to think about how long time has passed. And I'll pause and I'll say, all right, how much time has passed? And they say, oh, a minute. I said, it was 10 seconds, or they'll think the opposite. So that makes them have a realization of, oh, I thought that took longer than anticipated. Or, so it's just kind of giving them that extra motivation to realize, as long as you're increasing in some way, it's okay.
Thank you, Brianna. I love that. That makes complete sense. And I love what you said, that motivation doesn't have to be present to get started. And I think that you're right. It's a misconception of students that I have to feel really motivated to start this. And it's not true. You just have to start it. Because the motivation may never come. You may never be in that perfect mindset where you're super on target and you want to go for it. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, yes. And I also suggest to them that the first thing I want them to do is take a walk outside, because getting outside, as long as it's not dark, I always tell them, please don't go outside if it's too dark. But, I'll say, just take a walk outside, get some fresh air, come in, clean off your desk, get a clean workspace. Don't work in your bed. Always work in a clean workspace, get that accomplished. And then as they've done that, they've seen a little bit of improvement. And then I always celebrate those little successes. And they always think I'm silly, but I'll just be like, yes, you did it, just to give them that little silly extra motivation.
Thank you, Brianna. Melissa, any other questions before we wrap up?
I hope I didn't miss anybody. Scrolled through, and I think you guys touched on all of them.
Awesome.
Well, there's one last one. There's one last one. Have you heard of the 5-second rule? It's good to get started.
I have just yesterday, actually. I should have mentioned this on the student to clean his room. There's a method that a popular woman named Mel Robbins said, is that you do the countdown method. And I'm not sure why it works, but there's something in the brain that if you say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, you just get some extra. So I tried that yesterday on the student who didn't want to clean, and he thought it was silly, but I said, just try it. And then, so the next time we meet, we're going to talk about if it actually was effective.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of our webinar today on goal setting. I hope you found it to be helpful to you and your family. I wish you all the best for the remainder of the school year. Thank you again, and have a great day. Bye-bye.